Millionaire CEO holds a contest to choose his future wife, but a humble and disabled candidate decides to participate. Kim Ji-hoon was the kind of CEO everyone admired, but few dared to approach. At 30 years old, he ran one of Korea's largest conglomerates with almost mechanical precision, always focused on work, never distracted. Impeccably dressed, he walked through the office with a perpetually serious and distant expression, inspiring a mixture of respect and fear among his employees. But that day, Ji-hoon felt pressure like never before. After a long meeting with the board, he was called for a private talk with his mother, Kim Soo-jen, a refined woman with a piercing gaze. Seated in the leather chair in her office, she looked at him with a blend of warmth and demand. "Ji-hoon," she began, smoothing a jade brooch fastened to her coat. "You're carrying our family's legacy with honor, but it's time to think about the next step." Ji-hoon sighed, already anticipating what would come next. This wasn't the first time he'd heard his mother insist on marriage and heirs, but this time felt different. She spoke with an unshakable firmness about the importance of maintaining the family's prestige and ensuring the continuity of the business through an heir. "It's essential to find a suitable wife, someone who understands the responsibilities that come with our family name," Soo-jin continued, looking at her son with a determined expression. Ji-hoon hesitated. He knew just how much the family expected from him, but the idea of a marriage of convenience seemed completely meaningless to him. Yet his mother's pressure weighed on him more with each word she spoke. As Ji-hoon reflected on his mother's words, an unexpected idea crossed his mind, almost as a joke. What if he held a contest to choose a wife? After all, his life was business-focused, and a rigorous selection process could be a way to find someone compatible with his lifestyle without wasting time on dates or formal introductions. When he suggested the idea to his personal assistant, Park Min-jun, Ji-hoon noted his loyal employee's surprised expression. Even so, Min-jun smiled, clearly intrigued by the unusual proposal, and helped him organize the event. Thus, the announcement was made. Millionaire and CEO of Kang Corporations, Kim Ji-hoon, was in search of a wife and would hold a public contest to select the perfect candidate. Soon, the news spread, causing a nationwide stir. Hundreds of women registered, each with her own ambitions and dreams of winning the CEO's heart. Choosing through a contest was eccentric and practical, exactly what he wanted. But Ji-hoon had no idea that one of the applicants would be different from all the others. Across the city, Kang Soo-yeon lived in a completely different reality. At 28, she was a young librarian, passionate about books and a quiet life. After an accident in her childhood, Soo-yeon used a wheelchair, which forced her to endure many judgmental glances and prejudices throughout her life. However, she had learned to turn her reality into strength, becoming an independent person with a resilient heart. A close friend, always eager for fun, saw the contest announcement and, after much convincing, got Soo-yeon to apply. At first, she found the idea absurd. After all, what could a millionaire CEO want with a wheelchair-bound librarian? But her friend challenged her, saying she wouldn't have the courage to participate. Half-jokingly, Soo-yeon filled out the form and submitted her application. She never imagined she would be selected, much less that Ji-hoon himself would notice her. To her, this was nothing more than a passing amusement, something that would soon become just a funny memory. The big day arrived for the first in-person interviews with Ji-hoon, who was scheduled to evaluate the candidates personally. One by one, beautiful and elegant women entered the room, each trying to impress him with charm and sophistication, just as expected. Ji-hoon, however, remained detached, as if he were analyzing resumes instead of people. And then Kang Soo-yeon entered. She was dressed simply, her hair in a casual bun and with a gentle smile on her face. Unlike the others, Soo-yeon didn't seem intimidated by the grandeur of the place or Ji-hoon's stern gaze. On the contrary, her posture was that of someone with nothing to prove. Ji-hoon looked at her for a few seconds longer than he intended, noticing the contrast she brought. Noticing him watching, Soo-yeon smiled and without hesitation asked, "So, is this how you evaluate people, Mr. Kim?" With that almost clinical gaze. The room fell into an awkward silence, and Min-jun, standing beside his boss, nearly let slip a surprised smile. Ji-hoon, caught off guard by her boldness, didn't know how to respond immediately. He was used to being flattered, but Soo-yeon seemed completely indifferent to his status. For the first time, he felt challenged in a situation he himself had created. She was different from the other candidates, and Ji-hoon was intrigued. After the meeting, Ji-hoon continued to reflect. Soo-yeon was not the type of person he would have imagined as a partner, but her simplicity and authenticity affected him in a new way. Instead of talking about how she could support his career or impress him with grand ambitions, she had spoken about books and the importance of staying true to oneself. To her, the wheelchair was just a detail, and that disarmed him. As Ji-hoon tried to focus on the rest of the interviews, he couldn't get Soo-yeon out of his mind. There was something about her that unsettled him, something he couldn't explain. Soo-yeon, on the other hand, left the building without thinking much of the CEO. To her, it was simply an amusing event that would soon end. In the days that followed, the contest continued at a fast pace, with each new stage demanding that the candidates show even more dedication and creativity. For Ji-hoon, the activities had a clear objective: to understand the essence of each woman competing to be his future wife. It was an eccentric idea, but he enjoyed observing how each reacted to the different challenges. And deep down, he believed that this process would lead him to make the right decision. Among the women, Soo-yeon was the only one who didn't try to hide her disinterest in it all. While the others did everything to impress Ji-hoon, wearing striking clothes, giving perfect speeches, and carefully calculated gestures, Soo-yeon simply completed the tasks with a calm expression, as if she were doing a simple chore and not competing in a contest. She never spoke about herself unless questioned, always responding directly and without beating around the bush, surprising Ji-hoon's team and intriguing him even further. In one of these challenges, Ji-hoon proposed that the candidates present a life plan, sharing their dreams and aspirations. Many described desires to open nonprofits, support social causes, or work alongside the CEO in his company, investing in his corporate mission. Soo-yeon, however, brought an approach that left everyone baffled. When her turn came, she began her speech with disconcerting honesty. "My life plan?" She smiled, looking directly at Ji-hoon. "I just want a peaceful life. I've already been through a lot of hard times, so honestly, I just want peace. I want to keep working in my library, help people find books that touch them, and maybe have a comfortable, simple life. As for being your wife, Ji-hoon Si, let's just say I still don't see the appeal of spending my days trapped in a corporate world." The other candidates exchanged shocked glances, some struggling to hide their laughter, thinking she was sabotaging herself. But Ji-hoon did not laugh. He listened to every word in silence, surprised by the simplicity with which Soo-yeon viewed life, by the way she spoke of her dreams without pretense or filters. For her, the wheelchair was never a source of pity. It was just part of her routine. When she finished, Soo-yeon gave him a sincere smile, almost as if she were saying goodbye. After the presentation, Ji-hoon couldn't hide his curiosity and decided to approach her during the break. He found her near the glass windows, looking out at the city view. "So," he said, positioning himself beside her, "do you really think all of this is a bit unnecessary?" Soo-yeon turned to face him, her expression calm. "I'm not saying it's wrong," she explained directly. "It's just not what I would do. I think it's all very calculated, you know? Life is simpler than it seems." Ji-hoon observed her attentively. He was used to people who agreed with everything he said, but Soo-yeon was different. She seemed comfortable being herself, unconcerned with what he might think. It was intriguing and, in a way, refreshing. He smiled slightly, wondering why he felt so at ease in her presence, as if he could let his guard down. That afternoon, one of the final activities required the candidates to collaborate with Ji-hoon to plan a charity event. Each presented elaborate proposals filled with charts, marketing ideas, and social impact projections. But Soo-yeon was straightforward. Why not create something simpler that actually makes a difference in the lives of people who wouldn't have access to these events? She suggested, without worrying if it seemed too simple. Helping doesn't have to be grand. It's enough to solve small problems. Upon hearing this, Ji-hoon was silent, reflecting. There was something in her words that made him question his own methods. Perhaps he was too accustomed to luxury and grand ideas, forgetting that sometimes helping was a matter of simplicity. He realized that this young librarian offered him something rare, a worldview without glamour but full of meaning. In the days that followed, Ji-hoon began spending more time with Soo-yeon, disguising their talks under the pretext of discussing the contest activities. Each conversation with her fascinated him more. While the other candidates tried to impress him with charm and rehearsed gestures of kindness, Soo-yeon spoke to him as if he were just another acquaintance, treating him without the deference everyone insisted on adopting. In one of these conversations, Soo-yeon opened up a bit more about her life. She talked about the accident that had put her in a wheelchair, but without any sadness. She described how she had learned to be strong, to handle things on her own, and to face a world that often treated her with exaggerated compassion, or worse, with pity. "I learned to be enough for myself," Soo-yeon said. "I'm not a victim. And I know some people don't understand that, but I'm used to it. I don't need anyone treating me differently because of the wheelchair." Those words echoed in Ji-hoon's mind. He, who had always believed in the power and control that his wealth gave him, felt touched by the strength that Soo-yeon exuded. She wasn't rich. She didn't have the same power or prestige, but she seemed far more comfortable with herself than anyone he knew. Gradually, his interest in her went beyond mere curiosity. He found himself wanting to know more about her, to understand her view of the world and the reasons that made her so unique. And at the same time, he began to question his own values and what he truly sought in a partner. Ji-hoon knew that his family would not view this growing friendship favorably, much less any other feeling that might emerge. However, his assistant, Min-jun, who had already noticed the increasingly frequent interactions between the two, commented on it with a nearly satisfied expression. "Ji-hoon-si," he said, observing his boss after another relaxed conversation with Soo-yeon. "It seems you're genuinely interested in someone for the first time." Ji-hoon laughed but didn't deny it. He knew that Min Ji-jun wasn't wrong, and for the first time he felt that maybe something more significant was about to happen in his life. As the contest progressed, the bond between Ji-hoon and Soo-yeon deepened. During breaks from the activities, they talked about subjects that rarely had a place in his life. Soo-yeon told stories about the library visitors, about the power of books and the world she discovered within them. Ji-hoon, in turn, spoke about the pressures of the corporate world, the loneliness he felt despite his success, and the weight of carrying the future of the company on his shoulders. To Ji-hoon's surprise, Soo-yeon never treated him with the deference he was used to. She challenged him, disagreed with him, and made him reflect on what he truly sought in life. And with each conversation, he felt more connected to her, as if he had finally found someone with whom he could be himself. But this growing closeness quickly caught the attention of Ji-hoon's mother, Kim Soo-jin. Disturbed by the rumors beginning to spread and noticing her son's increasing involvement with an unsuitable candidate, Soo-jin decided to intervene. She called Ji-hoon for a serious conversation and got straight to the point. "Ji-hoon," she said firmly, "I've heard that you've been spending too much time with one of the candidates, a librarian, and a wheelchair user no less." Ji-hoon frowned, surprised by his mother's tone. "What does that matter, Mother? Soo-yeon is an incredible person. She makes me question things no one has ever had the courage to point out." Soo-jin sighed, trying to keep her composure. "You know what this decision means for the company and for our family. Imagine the backlash. This isn't the kind of image we want for the future couple of Kang corporations. Our family carries a responsibility, Ji-hoon. Your future wife needs to be someone who fits that role." Ji-hoon was frustrated by his mother's rigidity, but he knew she was right about the external pressures. He was caught between his growing feelings for Soo-yeon and the commitment to his family's and the company's image. For him, the possibility of choosing someone he truly loved, regardless of convention, seemed increasingly out of reach. While Ji-hoon struggled with his doubts, Soo-yeon was beginning to question herself too. She felt something different for Ji-hoon, a growing admiration she tried to ignore, believing that their lives were too different to truly come together. She knew she would never be accepted in his world and didn't want him to have to sacrifice anything for it. Yet she couldn't deny that being close to him brought her joy and that, despite their differences, they shared a deep understanding. One evening, Ji-hoon and Soo-yeon had their most honest conversation yet. He had invited her for a dinner in a garden restaurant, secluded from the team and the other contestants. Soo-yeon hesitated, but eventually accepted the invitation. Seated under the soft lights of the garden, Ji-hoon seemed more relaxed than ever. He opened up to her in a way he never imagined possible, sharing the challenges and frustrations of living under constant expectations. "Soo-yeon," he began, looking at her sincerely, "I've always felt like I didn't have a choice in life. Ever since I was young, everything was decided. My studies, my career, my responsibilities. And now, even my marriage seems like a choice I can't make for myself." Soo-yeon smiled, understanding the weight of his words. "Ji-hoon, I can't fully understand your position, but I know what it's like to fight to be seen for who you truly are. In my case, people see the wheelchair before they see me. It's a judgment that's exhausting, and the only way to deal with it is by being honest with myself." There was a moment of silence, and they just looked at each other, as if those words were enough to seal a mutual understanding. Ji-hoon realized that, more than ever, he wanted to be with her, no matter what it cost. But that evening also made Soo-yeon see reality more clearly. As much as she felt drawn to Ji-hoon, she knew she didn't belong in his world. The pressures on him were immense, and she feared that in the end, he would regret choosing a life with her. That night, Soo-yeon decided that she should protect both herself and him, even if it meant walking away. The next day, she wrote a letter to Ji-hoon explaining her decision. "Ji-hoon," she wrote, "our friendship has shown me that there are still good people, capable of understanding others with sincerity, but our worlds are too far apart. I hope you understand that I can't stay in this contest. It's not fair to me, and even less to you. I wish you all the happiness." When Ji-hoon found the letter, he felt a deep ache in his chest. He knew her departure was inevitable, but the reality of what it meant struck him hard. Soo-yeon had become someone indispensable, someone who had transformed his view of the world, and the thought of losing her shook him. He went to look for her at the library where she worked and found her arranging books on a shelf. She was alone, immersed in her task, and looked so calm that he felt hesitant to interrupt. But he couldn't let her go without a fight. "Soo-yeon," he called, his voice filled with emotion. She turned around, surprised to see him there. "Ji-hoon, I thought you would understand my decision." He approached her, feeling the weight of the words he needed to say. "I understand, Soo-yeon, but I don't agree. I can't lose you without at least trying. I know our life together would be full of obstacles, but you are the first person with whom I feel I can be myself, and that doesn't happen often." Soo-yeon sighed, torn between her heart and her mind. "Ji-hoon, I know you feel that now, but what about later? Your family, the company? It's all so much bigger than any choice we could make together." Ji-hoon took her hands, lowering his voice as if making a promise. "I don't care, Soo-yeon. If you give me a chance, I want to face everything by your side." Her eyes filled with tears, and she smiled, moved by his sincerity. But it still wasn't enough to make her lower her guard. "Ji-hoon, it's more complicated than just wanting to be together. I don't want you to regret sacrificing everything for me." With one last tender look, Soo-yeon said goodbye to him, believing that her decision was best for both of them. She left the room, leaving Ji-hoon alone, torn between his love for her and the expectations of a world that felt too small compared to what he felt. Ji-hoon stood there, absorbing the pain of what he had lost. He knew that his feelings for Soo-yeon were the most genuine he had ever experienced, and that her departure left him incomplete. In that moment, he decided he would not give up on her, no matter the consequences. In the days that followed Soo-yeon's departure, Ji-hoon tried to return to his routine, but nothing seemed to make sense anymore. His work, his meetings, even conversations with his family had lost their appeal. The emptiness left by Soo-yeon followed him everywhere, and he found himself reflecting more and more on her words, on the simplicity she brought to life and the meaning he didn't know how to search for. Her absence not only unsettled him, it left him desperate. For the first time, he realized that all his material possessions and the life he had built could not replace what she had given him, a genuine connection. One afternoon, while reading yet another report, Ji-hoon impatiently put down the papers and decided to go to the library where he knew he could find her. His heart pounded as he walked down the quiet hallway of the library, his nerves growing stronger. And there was Soo-yeon, calmly placing books from the shelf onto a cart, completely focused, with that serene demeanor that always captivated him. He approached her slowly, almost hesitantly. When Soo-yeon sensed his presence, Her eyes showed surprise, followed by a hint of sadness, as if she already knew he would come. Ji-hoon, I already said it was better this way, she said, her voice quiet and firm. I didn't want you to come. He sighed, looking at her with a determined expression. Soo-yeon, I understand why you wanted to distance yourself, but I can't accept it. I know you're worried about the challenges we'd face, but what I feel for you is stronger than any expectations. I can't move forward without you by my side. Soo-yeon looked at him with a mixture of affection and anguish. Ji-hoon, you have a responsibility to your family, to the company, and I don't want to be a burden to you. Ji-hoon shook his head, visibly frustrated. You don't understand, Soo-yeon. You were never a burden. Quite the opposite. You're the only person who makes me feel light, able to be myself. I've learned from you the importance of making real choices, and this is my choice. I want to be with you, regardless of what my family or anyone else thinks. Despite the sincere words, Soo-yeon remained hesitant. She knew that Ji-hoon's world would never easily accept a relationship like theirs, and she feared that someday he might regret the decision. But Ji-hoon didn't give up. He kept looking for her, day after day, each time more determined to show her that his love was real. One night, he went to the library while she was closing up. The air was cold, and a gentle fog hung over the street. Soo-yeon was putting away the last book when he approached her once more, with a look of determination and no hesitation. I've made a choice, Soo-yeon, he said before she could say anything. I faced everything I always feared. I told my mother, the board, and made it clear that I'm not willing to give you up. If it costs me the company or anything else, so be it. Soo-yeon's eyes filled with tears, touched by his resolve. She could see in Ji-hoon's eyes a sincerity she never thought she'd find in someone from his world. Yet the hesitation still lingered. Ji-hoon, I know you believe that now, but what if one day you look back and see that I took everything from you? Her voice wavered, filled with conflicting emotions. Ji-hoon took a deep breath, holding her hands and bending down to meet her gaze. Soo-yeon, you're not taking anything away. You've shown me what it means to truly live. With you, I can be who I am, without worrying about meeting expectations that never made sense to me. And I'd rather risk everything with you than live my life without you. They stood in silence for a moment. Soo-yeon closed her eyes, feeling the tears run down her face. For the first time, she realized that maybe they could be happy together, despite everything. They stayed there, simply sharing that moment of understanding and closeness, but the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Ji-hoon knew that, even though he had taken a firm stance on his choice, more challenges were to come, especially within his own family. The next day, Ji-hoon faced the greatest challenge yet. His family. His mother, Kim Soo-jin, waited for him in the family mansion's sitting room with a look of disappointment and frustration. She already knew about his decision and was ready for one last attempt to convince him to give up on Soo-yeon. Ji-hoon, she began, her tone colder than usual. I've always supported you in every decision, but now you're putting our family and our name at risk. Do you really think you can ignore what all of this means? Ji-hoon took a deep breath, feeling the weight of this conversation. Mother, I understand what you mean, but for the first time, I'm choosing for myself. I love Soo-yeon, and I'm willing to face any consequence to be with her. Soo-jin couldn't hide her fury and sadness. She had plans for her son, an image she had built over the years, and watching that dream crumble for a woman she considered inappropriate made her lose her composure. Ji-hoon, you're the CEO of Kung Corporations. Do you really think this girl can adapt to your life? That society will accept her by your side? She is different. Soo-jin hesitated before using that word, but she couldn't avoid it. But Ji-hoon stood firm. Mother, it's exactly because she's different that I love her. And if the company, society, or even the family can't accept that, then I'll have to live my life on my own terms. The conversation ended with almost unbearable tension. Soo-jin wasn't about to easily let go of her expectations, but Ji-hoon was determined to fight for Soo-yeon to the end. Meanwhile, Soo-yeon was also facing her own fears and insecurities. She knew that Ji-hoon had defied everything for her, but the fear that he might regret it still weighed on her heart. She wanted to believe his words, but the scars of a lifetime of judgment were hard to ignore. One cold afternoon, Ji-hoon invited Soo-yeon to a special outing. He took her to a small flower field outside the city, far from prying eyes. There, surrounded by flowers and the quiet of nature, he handed her a small handwritten letter. Soo-yeon, he began to read, his voice thick with emotion. In you, I found what I've always searched for. Someone who sees me for who I am, without masks, without pretenses. By your side, I feel free to live a real life. I want you to know that I'm willing to risk everything, because without you, none of it would make sense. You are my true love, and that's all that matters to me. His words finally broke down the last barriers Soo-yeon had built to protect herself. She cried, moved, realizing that, for the first time, someone accepted her exactly as she was. Ji-hoon, she replied, holding his hand tenderly. If you're willing to fight for me, then I'm willing to face everything by your side. They embraced under the open sky, sealing the promise of a future together, knowing that they were prepared to face the world with their heads held high. Ji-hoon and Soo-yeon left that flower field ready to start a new life together, certain that the love they shared was stronger than any convention. In the months that followed, Ji-hoon and Soo-yeon faced the reality of their relationship with courage and determination. Although they were more in love than ever, challenges began to surface, coming from both the corporate world and Ji-hoon's family circle. His mother, Kim Soo-jin, could not accept their relationship and made sure he knew of her disapproval. At every family gathering, she pressured Ji-hoon to rethink his decision, pointing out the difficulties Soo-yeon would face integrating into a world of appearance and status like theirs. The Kang Corporation's board, influenced by Ji-hoon's mother, began questioning his competence as CEO, hinting that his relationship with Soo-yeon might tarnish the company's image. Ji-hoon, however, was determined to protect Soo-yeon from all this weight. In one of the most critical moments, he met with the board and his mother and with calm resolve made it clear that his commitment to Soo-yeon was non-negotiable. Ladies and gentlemen, I understand everyone's concerns. He began with a calm and determined tone. But my personal life should not interfere with my competence as CEO. Soo-yeon is an important part of my life, and if any of you genuinely doubt my ability to lead because of this, I suggest you reconsider your views. Ji-hoon's firm stance had a major impact on the board, but the rumors and external pressures didn't disappear. Meanwhile, Soo-yeon also began to feel a bit stifled. She felt the weight of being by his side, the constant pressure of critical looks and of people who saw her as an intruder in that world. One night, when they met at Soo-yeon's small apartment, she opened up about feelings she had been holding back. Ji-hoon, she began, looking at him with a sad smile. I don't want you to suffer on my account. Maybe your mother is right in saying I don't belong in this world. I don't want you to have to fight so hard for us to be together. Ji-hoon looked at her tenderly, holding her hands. Soo-yeon, you've shown me a world I never imagined. You taught me to see beyond appearances and to understand the true meaning of being with someone. No matter what happens, you're the one I choose. He kissed her hands with affection, and Soo-yeon, moved, finally accepted the idea that he was truly willing to face everything for her. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine a future with Ji-hoon, a future where they could build a life together, rooted in the love and trust they had in each other. One night, as they walked together through the park, Ji-hoon suddenly stopped, pulled a small box from his pocket, and got down on one knee before her. Soo-yeon's heart raced as she looked at him, surprised and emotional. Soo-yeon, he began, his voice filled with emotion. I never imagined I'd meet someone like you, someone who would teach me so much about what it really means to live. You showed me the beauty of simplicity, of genuine love. Will you marry me? Tears welled up in Soo-yeon's eyes as she nodded, unable to speak, overcome with emotion. She leaned toward him and they embraced, knowing they were ready to face the world together. The news of their engagement quickly spread and caused a great stir. Ji-hoon's family, especially his mother, was inconsolable, and the Kang Corporation's board became even more uneasy about the publicity. Nevertheless, Ji-hoon and Soo-yeon stood firm, facing every challenge with their heads held high. To celebrate their love and make it official, Ji-hoon and Soo-yeon decided to have a simple, intimate ceremony, Far from the glamour and grandeur everyone expected of a wedding for the heir of Kang corporations, they wanted something that reflected who they were, something true and authentic. Only close friends and family were invited to the ceremony in a beautiful garden, decorated with flowers and lights that softly illuminated the setting. On the big day, Soo-yeon appeared in her wheelchair, wearing a simple white dress that highlighted her natural beauty. Ji-hoon, waiting at the altar with tears in his eyes, felt his heart race as he saw her. She was everything he had ever wanted and needed, and with each step she took toward him, he knew that all the challenges they had faced together had been worth it. During their vows, Ji-hoon held her hand tenderly and looking into her eyes promised that he would always be by her side, facing any obstacle to keep her happy. "Soo-yeon," he said, his voice soft and filled with emotion. "You are my courage, my peace, and my happiness. I promise never to let anyone come between us, to face the world if need be. You taught me what love is, and today, in front of everyone, I vow to love you for the rest of my life." With tears in her eyes, Soo-yeon replied with the same tenderness and intensity. "Ji-hoon, you showed me that true love exists, that I am worthy of being loved just as I am. I promise to stand by your side no matter what path lies ahead. I love you, and I am grateful that we found each other." After the ceremony, the couple shared a moment of joy with their friends and family, everyone moved by the journey they had witnessed. Ji-hoon and Soo-yeon began their life together, aware that the love they shared was rare and true, that would not be shaken by prejudice or social conventions. And over time, even Ji-hoon's mother, Kim Soo-jin, began to see her son's love for Soo-yeon with a new perspective. Gradually, she came to understand that Ji-hoon's happiness truly was with Soo-yeon. Reluctantly, but with a slightly more open heart, she reached out to Soo-yeon. On their one-year wedding anniversary, Ji-hoon and Soo-yeon were sitting in the garden of their home, where they had planted new flowers as a symbol of the love they nurtured daily. It was a life far from the glamour and weight of past expectations, but they had each other, and that was all they needed. There, among the flowers and the gentle sound of the wind, Ji-hoon kissed Soo-yeon's hand and smiled, certain that he had made the right choice. The choice to love and be loved just as they were, without pretense, without constraints. And together, they built a fulfilling life, knowing they had faced the world but had won through the power of true love.